From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Phoenix has a new mayor-elect. Coming up on Cronkite News, we'll have reaction from the city's special election.
An issue that hits close to home. The Safford mayor and his wife sit down to talk about drug overdose after a tragic loss.
Plus, after a federal investigation into college admission scandals, advice on the right way to get your children into an elite university.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Bryce Newberry.
And I'm Imani Stevens. Thank you for joining us.
Voters headed to the polls yesterday for a special runoff election to choose the next mayor of Phoenix. Residents of Phoenix voted and came out in large support for Kate Gallego.
And the celebration started early at the watch party for the new mayor-elect. And last night, I spoke to Gallego after she declared a victory.
Thanks to all of you, we did it.
A lead in votes that rang in the celebratory cheers.
For the last 17 months, you have been my partners as we have crisscrossed the city. We have campaigned at street fairs, home tours, churches, even roller derby.
Her opponent, Daniel Valenzuela, in a tweet thanked his supporters and conceded from the race. A supporter of Gallego and Phoenix resident was initially divided between the candidates.
Since the general election, she's really proved herself to be the right candidate for Phoenix.
But at the end of it, Gallego standing by her values is what made Gully stick with Kate Gallego.
And I'm excited to see that we are moving forward with her as our new mayor.
Gallego assured supporters that the city of Phoenix will move forward, not only with her role as mayor, but together.
It's such an honor that so many people have voted for me. And I also am honored to serve the people who didn't vote for me. I'm going to work as hard as I can to represent everyone in this city.
This win makes Gallego the second woman in history to be elected as the mayor of Phoenix. Phoenix's first female mayor was Margaret T. Hance, first elected back in 1976. Mayor-elect Kate Gallego said the work starts now, working together to build a city of the future. Gallego will be sworn in March 21st at Comerica Theater.
According to a report published by the Urban Indian Health Institute, Arizona is the third most dangerous state for Native American women in the country.
That's why legislators and advocates are coming together to push forward a bill that, if signed into law, would create a first-of-its-kind task force in our state, combating the high numbers of murdered and missing Indigenous women. Cronkite News reporter Hattie Meyer has more.
In a unanimous vote, House Bill 2570 passed, sending it now for a vote in the Senate.
There was no nays, it was all A's. To see the women come out and to see how emotional and to know that they back this, and I know they know of other people in their lives, mothers, sisters, daughters, that have happened to them.
Dottie Lizer, the second lady of the Navajo Nation, can't help but choke up as she recalls the murder of her close friend's sister, Patricia Platero.
She was 49 years old. She's from Tojajale, New Mexico. She went missing in 2015, and her body was found on the west side of Albuquerque on July 2nd, 2015, and her case is still unsolved.
Lizer was one of dozens of Indigenous women dressed in red who filled the gallery overlooking the House of Representatives supporting House Bill 2570. The goal is to have access to more information that can help bring down the alarming rates in which Indigenous women are murdered, abused, or assaulted.
HB 2570 will create a committee to look at the problem of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. It's a committee that will be made up of law enforcement agencies from both the urban and rural Arizona-based agencies, as well as the 22 tribal nations.
Native women experience violent crime at an incredibly high rate, and most of their cases end up sitting in folders as cold cases. Part of this is due to a lack of jurisdiction and no crossover between Native and non-Native law enforcement.
The tribal nations are sovereign nations, so our rural county sheriffs and law enforcement don't have jurisdiction within the tribal nations, and the tribal nations law enforcement doesn't have jurisdiction outside of the tribal nations.
Although they know there are still challenges ahead, advocates say the passing of this bill is a step in the right direction in fighting violence against Native American women, and they know they can't do it alone.
They're acknowledging the problem. They're looking to partner with our Indigenous communities to solve this problem.
Hattie Meyer, Cronkite News.
State legislators in other states like New Mexico, Nebraska, and Minnesota are also reviewing bills that would create committees, such as the one that is being proposed here in Arizona.
The opioid epidemic is affecting all types of people, wealthy, homeless, old, and young. Last year, the mayor of Safford, Arizona lost his 25-year-old son to an opioid overdose. Now, he and his wife are using their heartbreak to make a difference.
My name is Jason Couts, and I'm the mayor of City of Safford.
I am the associate pastor here at the river.
Jason and Maria Couts are leaders in a town of less than 10,000 people.
1 week after graduation, we got married. And then 4 months later, I got pregnant with Josiah.
Josiah was their oldest son. He grew up playing sports, making straight A's, always with an army of friends.
He seemed to live like the perfect life. Everyone loved him. He just didn't have a whole lot of struggles.
He went to Mesa Community College, but it wasn't long before his perfect life started to shatter.
And the next thing that we knew, he was there about 6 months, and we got a call from a friend, and they said, Josiah's 90 pounds. He's not going to college, and he's just stuck in his apartment. We're like, what?
I was just chasing after saving the community, saving the world, if you may, and yet I failed on my own home front.
Josiah was hooked on heroin. Jason and Maria brought him back to Safford right away, starting a series of detoxes, treatments, and near-death experiences over the next few years.
We wanted our kid to get clean. We wanted him to get off of the drug. We wanted him to have a normal life because we thought we were normal. We were normal.
The normalcy finally came after Josiah went through his last rehab in Phoenix, then moved to Paris following the love of his life. He spent a year learning the language in the city so his first foreign job could be a tour guide.
This is Josiah. He was so driven.
Things were looking up for Josiah, but the cravings returned, and before long, his marriage was over. The 25-year-old returned to Safford, started working again, and saved all his money to go on a cross-country road trip with friends. After a month on the road,
and Josiah came back to Safford, spent the night. The next day, he slept all day.
It was January 22nd, 2018. They had family time that night. The last night they'd have that chance. Josiah didn't show up for work again the next day, so when Jason got home, Maria asked him to go check on Josiah. He worried, slowly making his way up the stairs. Josiah's room was locked, but Jason pried his way in.
This is forever burned and etched into my mind and in my memory. And there he was, off the side of the bed, face like this, kind of crunched over. And I run, I just start screaming. I touch him, I make sure that there's no pulse and the body is as cold as ice.
You were screaming, he's dead. No, Josiah, he's dead.
And I just started screaming, and I don't know what to do. I'm just like running around in circles. And I'm screaming, I'm coming down, and I'm yelling and screaming, and Maria's all what? And she's like panicked herself, and then she runs up there, and she's just holding her lifeless son.
Lifeless after using a $5 bump of heroin laced with fentanyl.
And when they showed it to me, I said, you've got to be kidding me. That is not what killed my son.
The life-ending dose came from a high school acquaintance who warned Josiah over text message how strong it was.
The young man had told Josiah, only do 75% of it because it's fire. And he put little fires, like 5 little fires across there.
The Couts say Josiah's death is helping the Safford community push through the opioid epidemic.
I think because of the stigma was always that it's not my family. My family has to appear to be perfect. My family has to, we're a small community and it's a religious community. And so religion tends to make people want to appear to be perfect instead of real.
And that's what's making an impact on people who go to church with Jason and Maria.
Before Jason and Maria, I was overwhelmed and I felt so helpless. Like, I have a lot of family members who are lost in addiction, and I had no idea how to help them until Jason and Maria came alongside me and I could ask them questions.
Even while helping others, there's still internal guilt Jason copes with every day.
I would say I'm sorry. I was so mean to him. I was the boss. I was the dad. There was times we butted heads at work, and I would yell and I would scream and I'd cuss at him.
Jason's tough love turning softer as the pain and guilt motivate the Couts family to carry Josiah's legacy.
I see a book, and it's a large book, and 37 pages of the book were written up by Josiah himself. But his book is not going to stop turning as long as I'm on this earth. It's going to still be written out. It wasn't for nothing that my son was born. It wasn't for nothing that what my son went through and what we've gone through in our lives. I will finish his book if it's the last thing I do.
Jason and Maria started a nonprofit after Josiah's death, and they plan to open Josiah House, which would be the first 24-hour rehab center for people struggling with substance abuse in Safford.
Veterans are often thanked for their service to our country, but some veterans are still fighting internal battles like substance abuse disorder long after they retire. Madeline Holler took a trip to Arizona's Footprints to Recovery, a treatment center that promises better days ahead.
I spoke to one veteran who shares his story on addiction, overdose, and recovery. He's using his experiences to help others.
This than I was to go to boot camp.
Nick Kratzer, a U.S. Marine, like most veterans, have a love for country. But without realizing it, sometimes serving your country can have unforeseen impacts to your health. He was discharged from the armed forces after a knee injury. What started out as using prescription drugs to control pain shifted to opioid addiction. Kratzer and Dr. Caitlin Simpson spoke with me over Google Hangouts.
And I was with, a bunch of peers that had shared similar stories, about their feelings and whatnot. And that's when I came to terms with it. Like, I was the one that was doing heroin.
Roughly 10 years after being on pain medication, Kratzer overdosed. He was found by his father on his father's birthday, which began the start of his journey to recovery.
Here at Detox, it is going to be a majority of group and then individual therapy as needed.
Japanga says several veterans come through their programs from in-state and out-of-state to better tackle their challenges, including opioid addiction, a prevalent issue in our veterans community.
Sometimes they need ancillary support outside of the VA, and it's there that gap starts to exist where the systems become disjointed.
According to the Arizona Department of Health Services, more than 2 people die from opioid overdoses each day just in Arizona.
I remember I ran to the bathroom and broke down and started to cry, and one of the guys I was in treatment with came into the bathroom and he's like, "You don't have to do that in here. There's no shame and feeling, like this is a part of the process."
Since Kratzer's recovery treatment at Footprints, he has taken on the role of regional outreach manager, helping others who were in his shoes 4 years ago to realize there are better days ahead.
Footprints to Recovery says that 1 in 7 people will develop a substance abuse disorder in their lifetime, while only 1 in 10 will actually receive treatment. This February marked 4 years of sobriety for Kratzer. In the Media Center, Madeline Holler, Cronkite News.
In the wake of Sunday's plane crash of an Ethiopian Airlines flight on a Boeing 737 Max 8 jet, today the FAA announced an emergency order to ground those planes. President Trump made an announcement before the FAA released a statement suspending the use of Boeing 737 Max 8 and Max 9 aircraft on U.S.-based flights or by U.S. airlines. The FAA says the decision comes after new evidence came out from the Ethiopian Airlines crash. That crash was the second on a Boeing 737 Max 8 in the past 6 months, after a Lion Air crash killed all passengers on board in October. The U.S. joins more than 45 countries and 26 airlines to ground the aircraft.
New Arizona ties to the college admission scandal. Reporter Nicole Hernandez has a breakdown of how Arizona is connected to the scheme.
Social media has been buzzing about the scam that has many high-profile people in legal trouble. Here in Arizona, ASU was brought into the mix after actress Lori Loughlin's husband mentioned the college in an email related to the scandal. Then a developer who had property here in the valley made headlines for being charged in connection with the bribery case.
The federal government accused developer Robert Flaxman, whose company helped create the Monte Lucia Resort in Scottsdale, with paying several $100,000 to get his son into University of San Diego. Flaxman is one of several cases of bribery outlined in this FBI affidavit. A portion of these parents tapped into schools' athletic systems to get their children admitted. Here's how that system works for the typical recruited athlete.
They go through the admissions process, and if they're accepted, they're accepted, and that's just how it is. But if they are underperforming, the coach has an ability to use one of an allocated number of slots for admissions.
But sometimes not all of those slots will be used, so parents were paying to have their child admitted through a sports team's roster, sometimes with no intention of ever playing that sport.
Who has the knowledge and the resources to gain this pathway? It's this knowledge that's really a reflection of your eliteness and your wealth.
College admissions consultant Aaron Goodnow helps students with Ivy League applications for a living, saying getting into schools of this caliber is like winning the lottery.
Expectations for getting into these Ivy League schools or anything else is really hard, and I always try to manage those expectations.
Spend around 20 hours with her working on essays, preparing for interviews, studying for tests, and more for the chance to attend these top schools. In the broadcast center, Nicole Hernandez, Cronkite News.
A court document was released with Lori Loughlin's husband, Massimo Giannoli, stating he wanted his daughters to get into any university other than Arizona State University.
And many people took to Twitter to respond. One ASU graduate stated she made the best decision by attending ASU, even after she got into the University of Southern California, because ASU gave her a scholarship. One Twitter user tweeted out a list of notable ASU alums, including members of Congress, John Hughes, and Jimmy Kimmel.
Arizona State University even tweeted, saying, "Today and every day, ASU will be, quote, measured not by whom it excludes, but by whom it includes and how they succeed." Daughter of late John McCain, Megan McCain, tweeted saying, "The McCain Institute for International Leadership does incredible work with students in cooperation with ASU, and I guarantee those students involved will go on to do great things in the world and didn't have to lie to get there." Activists are looking to make Arizona the 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment.
Up next, we'll show you those who have spent the last 3 days marching 38 miles to push for equal rights.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
People from across the country came together to march a mile for each state vote needed to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment.
Reporter Gabriella Becerra spoke with the marchers who walked through rain and shine for the cause.
Despite the weather and the blisters, marchers finished the final 10-mile stretch of their 3-day march. They began today at Senator Kyrsten Sinema's office this morning and ended at the Arizona State Capitol, where supporters rallied with legislators.
This cause is important. Our mothers deserve this, our sisters deserve this, our daughters deserve this, we deserve this, and we're going to do it.
Equal Rights Amendment supporters marched 38 miles in 3 days. Their goal is for Arizona to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. The Equal Rights Amendment was proposed and sent to the states for ratification in 1972. Arizona is one of 13 states that has not ratified the amendment.
Make no mistake, there are men doing everything in their power to stop the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. But that crossroads at which we find ourselves will not be navigated by the men. it will ultimately be navigated by the women.
Kim Mundis initiated the idea of the march.
The idea was in part inspired by women who marched from Newark, New Jersey, all the way to Washington, D.C., to march on D.C. to demand the right to vote.
Mundis also kept the group on pace.
It's been tough. It's been tiring. We're sore.
Marchers like Catherine Roxlow walked all 38 miles over the past 3 days. Roxlow says the pain,
my feet hurt so bad,
is worth it.
This is nothing. I can take a couple blisters. I mean, for everything everyone's done before us, this is a piece of cake. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to do this.
The marchers finished their 3-day march by sitting in the galleries of the House and Senate. In the broadcast center, Gabriela Becerra, Cronkite News.
Coming up next, how tribal leaders are coming together to take a stand.
Fighting to protect a national monument that's become a political battleground.
I'm Matt Berry, ESPN Sports Center anchor and graduate of ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. With its bachelor's and master's degrees in sports journalism, the Cronkite School is preparing the next generation of sports journalists to tell stories that matter, stories that excite, inspire, and inform. Cronkite immerses students in covering sports at all levels in one of the country's top sports markets. It's this hands-on experience under the guidance of award-winning sports media veterans that shape the top journalists of tomorrow.
Stay in the know on the go. At Cronkite News, we work hard to report the facts and keep you updated, whether we're on set or on the scene.
Taking it from the studio to the field. So I'm here in South Phoenix.
In Phoenix, we're just a click away. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or find us online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org. The Bears Ears National Monument in southern Utah was created in 2016 with the stroke of a pen by President Barack Obama. And it was cut to a fraction of that size with another stroke of the pen by President Donald Trump. But that was not the end of the fight over Bears Ears, which continued today. Alyssa Klink has the story from Washington.
Hopi Vice Chairman Clark Huang-Tanakuva made a promise to fellow tribe members after testifying today to the House Natural Resources Committee.
I'm going to stand up. I'm going to lead the people in the right way. Hopefully something good will come out of this case right here.
Stand up to President Donald Trump, who cut Bears Ears National Monument from the 1.35 million acres approved by former President Barack Obama to just over 200,000 acres today, an 85% reduction.
We were very upset with the decision that he made, and without consultation, everything kind of came to a quick decision.
Huang-Tanakuva, along with witnesses from the Pueblo of Zuni and Ute tribes, said the lands are sacred to them, but the cuts were made without their input, a point echoed by Representative Raul Grijalva.
Voices were left out, and that the decision was a decision that was predetermined.
Critics turned the argument back on Obama, saying he never asked them about creating Bears Ears in the first place, and that the Trump administration followed the rules as best it could.
Every realignment, the realignment that Mr. Trump did, also was done by one person. I know the Trump administration tried to create a process to go by it, but the problem is there are no rules. There is no process in the law for either creation or readjustments, and that's part of the problem.
Whatever the process ends up being, Huang-Tanakuva says he hopes the first people are consulted, but more importantly, that the land is preserved.
We were here first, and maybe in that kind of respect, I hope. And it's only these kind of people that will make legislative changes, that it will become permanent, that they'll respect the area also for everybody to enjoy.
In Washington, Alyssa Klink, Cronkite News.
Bears Ears was not the only monument discussed today. The hearing also looked at Trump's decision to cut the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument from 1.7 million acres, approved by former President Bill Clinton, down to just over 1 million acres.
Sunshine is back, but what's going on with the wind?
Well, the funny thing is with these winds today, you may have came home to your trash bin knocked over, or even in the neighbor's yard, because those winds have been gusting over 30 miles per hour across the valley today. Let's walk you through those winds and what they'll look like tonight. In fact, Futurecast shows those winds backing off as we head into tomorrow. But before that, even out to the east around Stafford, winds will still be pretty gusting out there. But again, tomorrow, those winds will back off the majority of the state. besides the Colorado River Valley, because those winds have a northerly component. They get accelerated down the valley out there, which is why Bullhead City and Lake Havasu City could be pretty breezy for tomorrow on your Thursday. As we talk about that storm system that brought a lot of rain and snow to our state yesterday, it has quickly intensified. In fact, is expected to bomb out later this evening, which is when a central pressure drops about 24 millibars in 24 hours. So this thing could be as equally as strong as a Category 1 hurricane later tonight. So definitely a pretty historic event taking place across the Midwest. But for our forecast, those temperatures are going to remain pretty chilly tomorrow. In fact, 45 at 8 a.m., only warming up to about 57 at noon, and then low 60s for that 4 o'clock temperatures. So about 10 to 12 degrees below the average for where we should be this time of year. And those lows still going to be in the teens and 20s for most of the high country. And those high temperatures only making it into the 30s and 40s for places like Flagstaff, Heber, down through Payson, Tucson only topping out around 60 degrees for tomorrow. So as we jump ahead to your weekend planner, again, I think we'll warm up much warmer than what we saw on tomorrow. We'll see 50s in the morning, warming up into those 70s by noon, and then topping out around the 80s as we head into Sunday afternoon. So pretty gorgeous weekend coming up. Spring training games are looking pretty good for this weekend as well. But again, as we talk about your 7-day forecast, it's off to the races with those temperatures as we head into Friday and Saturday. Abundant sunshine returns on Saturday again, 78 degrees, and then 80s set in just in time for Sunday and into Monday, as well as into next week. In fact, those mid-80s coming back on Tuesday. And check out those lows back down into the 60s on Tuesday as well. So some very nice weather coming as we head into next week. In fact, last week, I believe we hit our first 80-degree temperature here in Phoenix, and we're about to do it all over again heading next week.
Before you know it, 90.
Yep, for sure.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.